Okay, good. So what you're seeing here is one of the ways of using epitweetr, which is a virtual machine. So it's kind of a computer in the cloud. Several users having access to this virtual machine can access. So I will show you now how it works in practical terms, what most of the things that Francisco presented. So as you see, you can have already the script prepared in case you need to reinstall for having a new version of R. There are a few lines to install and then to install the package. I will not do that because we already have it installed. And as any R package, we will need to load epitweetr and then launch epitweetr in our working directory. This should change depending on what is your working directory. So either you can have it here directly as a window of RStudio, or you can also have the possibility to open it in the browser. Here are the different pages that was mentioned. So I will start from the back, actually. This is a troubleshoot. This was implemented already in the first version, and it will give the user some idea on what is the situation of the pre-requirements for running epitweetr. You see that it says true. In case it says false, you get a message that will help you with what could be done. So for example, about the Java version, you will get a comment saying, please check the version, it should be between this and this version. If you haven't authenticated yourself with the Twitter credentials, it will also say something similar. So really to guide the user as much as possible on what could be the reason for not passing this test. The configuration page is basically where all the background work in this Shiny app can be managed. Here, the user can decide to the different settings. We have included a lot of configurable settings. That's also one of the things that we'll be discussing in the breakout group, whether it's too much or too little. And the idea is that each user can adapt that to their needs. So it goes, it starts with executing the pipelines that epitweetr has, the database, which is the new addition from this year's version, the collection and processing, which as explained is done on the go, and then the final step, which is about requirements and alerts. And then you can see here for these specific ones, whether it's a success, schedule, running, aborted. And then you will see if it's aborted, a message that again will give some insight to the user on what could be happening there. So here we have the first three success, and then you can see also when was the last time that started, when was the last time that ended as well, to have an idea. And also what is the status. So it's scheduled to be running about an hour for the alerts. And why is that? So here you can set up the span in which the tweets are collected and processed, and also in which the alerts are being detected, and other requirements as well, the dependencies, the geonames, database, and the different languages. There's some configurations that can be changed as well regarding the signal detection. I will not go into all the detail. There's the information on the user documentation. And then, as mentioned, the topics can be completely changed. So you can download the default that comes from the tool, so you know for sure which are the headings, because that's important to keep the same headings. You can download the one that you have, and you can upload as many versions and as many topics as you want. So even though it was initially designed for infectious diseases due to the ECDC mandate, it can be used for literally anything, any type of discussion in Twitter. Here you can see one stated, this is for the time zone that we are now. When you put the span and it start running, what are the times that is expected to get final launch these different slots? And then there's more information on the computational power of the computer. So depending on what you have, this could be adapted, it could be higher or lower. There's some recommendations in the user documentation of what is the minimum required for epitweetr to be running, and what is the gold standard, let's say the best performance you would get for these different tasks. There's a lot of different, settings that can be changed. These open source links, we put them editable because we actually, during the previous version, this version, they changed the utils, I think it was. So it was not working. We already adapted that, and it has now the correct link. But these are things that can happen. So we are trying to make it as sustainable as possible without having to relaunch a new version or us as the owners of the package to change it. Then there's the part on the Twitter authentication that can be either the user account or the app. In order to use this version 2, you need to have a developer account. It's free. You just need to answer some questions on why are you using that for, and it depends on the time. It can go from few weeks to 2-3 months. Then Twitter will give you access to this account, and then you can enter the different tokens and secret numbers. For the email authentication, that's the email that will be sending the alerts. It can be your own email. Just remember that this is the one sending. Even though you use the same one for receiving, you need to set it in the subscriber list. And then there's the new feature, which is the admin email, which in this case is myself, that receive these emails on the status of the different tasks. One thing we also have as an additional health check in case all of the tasks are not working, since we're expected to receive at least 3 emails per day from epitweetr. So if we don't receive an email, that's also a signal that probably something went wrong. For example, the virtual machine being restarted or maintenance. There's the possibility for changing the languages. By default, at ECDC, we have English, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. But as you see, there are like, I think, 170 languages available from the fast text vectors. There's quite a lot. I wouldn't dare to say all languages in the world are there, but I would say that a big amount. The important users is the list of trusted Twitter users that will allow you to check when you get an alert or a signal as an additional information to better assess the relevance and importance of these alerts. The subscribers is basically, as I mentioned, the people that are receiving the emails. So if you're using this tool for yourself, meaning that you will be launching the things and receiving it, you would need to put your email back here in email authentication, and you will also need to put your email here in subscribers. I will not go into a lot of details. As you see, we have different topics with subscribers with different needs. And then there's the countries and regions, which is also possibility to be changed and adapted, either if it's only the name, so if you want to rename this for having a different name in the visualization, or if you want to add things up to the country level, which is the minimum geographical level that is allowed now in epitweetr. Okay, so that would be for the configuration page. Then data protection. So just to do a quick search there. So as mentioned, the idea here is either to anonymize tweets, to delete tweets from users, or mainly to rely on the GDPR. I will not show more just for that reason. And another page is the geotagging training. So this is slightly different of what was available in the previous version. In this case, we have the possibility to annotate the tweets on how the geolocation has been extracted. So here you can see the database that has been used, and you could also check once you decided what is the word that could be, or if there's a word that could be used to extract the geolocation from the tweet, what is the match that epitweetr gave. There's also the possibility of hard coding this, meaning that every time I see this word, it goes into this location. But we really discourage that because it can affect how this model is flexible for future tweets. But there's, again, also a possibility. We keep with the epitweetr of having it as flexible as possible. Default settings are the ones that we usually use at ECDC for obvious reasons, but it has a lot of possibilities trying to cover as many options as we can. The alerts, let me just show annotations. So the alerts is, again, talking about the annotation. So in this case, alerts is a group of tweets. So we are not annotating tweets, but what we are doing here is, depending on the information we have, decide on what is the classification. Ariana will explain later on how we, what are the categories that we have at ECDC and how we train that. But again, it really depends. It's up to the user to decide. You can even call it categories 1, 2, 3. You can call it whatever is best for you. The only thing that the model will see is not the name of the category as such, but the number of categories, what you have allocated to each of the categories as a match, and then to learn to do it for new signal. It's only done on perspective because the idea of epitweetr is for real time. It's not for historical analysis. So that's why we always focus on what is done now and for the future, and not to increase the workload of the tool for changes what was learned by these models in the past. And one thing also that we added is this real-time evaluation of the different models. Currently, there are 3 models included. I mean, of course, can be fine-tuned with small parameters there. And then by default, it will take the one with the best performance. And that's also similar done with the geotag. Okay, and then if we go to the dashboard, so this page is intended to show you what is the data that you have behind. You see that there's a lot of options that can be changed. Just consider that these changes are not going to be applied into the tool itself. That's the purpose of the configuration. So why do we have this? To facilitate the user in taking the decision on which settings to get. So here you can see how many alerts you would get, how many things to analyze. So it's really useful not only to visualize the data, but also to give you an idea of what would be the output and the workload for the epidemic intelligence experts when analyzing this information. So I'm going to use a real example to show you how it works, which is about the Ebola case some weeks ago that were started to be reported in DRC, in Democratic Republic of the Congo. So you can also see how much time it takes, how it goes, and how we do it also ourselves for this. So I will put work all, which is basically all tweets, even those that are not geolocated, and also Africa. Once I have entered what I want, then I can click run. This is the status that Francisco was mentioning. You also at some point saw one pop-up window that was coming up, popping up, which is about the new data infrastructure that will help you with getting this data. I see there are some hands, but if you can just spare until the end, and then I will give the floor. Thank you. So it's a bit light here, but you can see basically the line. Sorry, I think I put the wrong dates. That's why. Okay, so we'll rerun it. In any case, you can start seeing what are the outputs that we have. So we have the trend lines for each of the regions that you selected. You have the line, and then the shadow is the confidence interval that epitweetr has calculated to be the maximum and minimum expected tweets. We here only focus on anything that goes over, not those that go below. Okay, so now I got the dates I wanted. So these triangles will tell you that there's something that is unusual according to the data from the previous days. So you can see that there was a signal here. It was expected to have 736 tweets, but actually it had almost 900. So that was considered, and again, it's depending on the number of tweets, in this case for the world on Ebola from the previous 7 days in Twitter. And there's another peak here. You can also see some peaks for Africa. And then, as mentioned, you can go to the hashtags and see which were the most frequently hashtag. We see here Mandaka, which is actually Ecuador, news, DRC Congo, Ebola. So there's still some words that could tell you what is happening. If you go to the URLs, there's actually, for example, here, some self-explanatory URL from WHO, Afro region, saying Democratic Republic Congo declares new Ebola outbreak Mandaka. So you can actually click here and then it will lead you directly to this information, which is an official information confirming that there was a new outbreak of Ebola declared in DRC. So as you see, Ariana will explain a bit more on this, but this has given us an additional option to be faster in analyzing these signals.